dinosaur. And indeed, they have a good collection. They have Sophie the Stegosaurus, for those who haven't seen it in the museum to your left. You can do a guided audio tour with David Attenborough. That's quite a new thing. Go through all the exhibits. So, of course, a lot of it is modern zoology. And it's all colour-coded into sections. It's been, to be fair, a long time since I've been there. So it's changed a bit. They've got the Darwin Centre now, all about modern zoology, but also evolution and things. And they have a section on mineralogy, so rocks and minerals actually brought back from the Apollo 11 landings to left on the moon. That's what I remember seeing. In front of it, the nation's favourite museum. This is often voted for as the nation's favourite. It's called the Victoria and Albert Museum. And here it is, coming up to your left. So the building was just a building, really. Opened in 1901. Named after, of course, Victoria, Queen Victoria, who was our longest reigning monarch, and her husband, Prince Albert. This was a museum that Prince Albert wanted, all about man-made or people-made things, the applied arts, all about our inventions and things that we're done. So it has an interesting collection. The jewellery collection alone, I saw it last year again, in the building to your left. 300,000 pieces of jewellery, including Fabergé, going back to the 1300s. If you want to see one thing in the museum to your left, I can tell you won't be disappointed in the jewellery collection. It is amazing. But they're well known for having unusual items. In the museum to your left, they have original manuscripts that belong to Charles Dickens. And you can look, sometimes they put on display, and you can see what he was working on. Great Expectations, these are the original manuscripts of his novels. They even have notebooks that once belonged to Leonardo da Vinci, they brought from Italy, and show some of the inventions that he was working on. So it's a very unusual collection. The history of fashion is one of my favourites in the museum to your left. You can start in the 1300s and go through the history of fashion and see what we wore over the years. It's quite interesting. And of course we're coming to one of London's most famous stores. Coming up on your right is Harrods. According to what I read recently, Harrods is now the only store in London that still makes more money from its original business, if you like. Most businesses make more money online today, but Harrods still making money from its original store because it's so famous. People want to visit Harrods in person, I guess. It was once only one department when it opened in 1851, isn't that amazing? Charles Henry Harrods was a tea merchant, and he opened Harrods in 1851. It's now 300 different departments. You can see it coming into view now to your right, Harrods department store. Famous for its summer sales. I was speaking to someone only this morning at my local coffee bar. She said, when I used to smoke, I'd go and treat myself with cigarettes from Harrods, and she said I'd really look after them. And I'd only have one or two a day, because she said even then, in the 80s, they were £20 a packet of cigarettes. But she said it looked good to have this packet of Harrods cigarettes and show them, and every now and again have a cigarette from that packet. They've got the food hall. If you can't afford anything, you might find something in the food hall. Their motto is all things to all people everywhere. That is the genuine motto of Harrods. The Latin is omnius omnia obi, all things to all people everywhere. So they promise they can get you anything. So there's a famous story that the American President Ronald Reagan phoned up and said this to Harrods. He said, I see your motto, all things to all people everywhere. I bet you can't sell me an elephant for the Republican Party convention. And he said there was a pause on the line, and the British voice said, would you like an African or an Indian elephant, sir? Isn't that something? They even could sell him a choice of elephants. Something we don't encourage today. It was called Pet Kingdom. And they could literally sell you skunks. If you wanted a skunk, a lion cub was sold to 2 Australians before it was released back into the wild. 12,000 light bulbs, by the way, around Harrods, and they have to change 300 every week. There it is to your right, our famous Harrods department store. Once owned by Muhammad Al Fayed, I should mention, until 2010. It was his son who was, of course, with dating Princess Diana. So we're still in Knightsbridge. Not too bad for a Friday traffic-wise. I'm going to say this is not too bad. So we're heading back, and you can see the Burberry store coming up again to your right. You'll see it, and across from the Burberry store is Harvey Nichols. The street between Harvey Nichols to your right and the Burberry store is called Sloane Street, and that's where you find Gucci bags, Christian Dior, Karl Lagerfeld, some of our really top name brands. And we had a name for people who used to shop on Sloane Street because there were quite often up and coming people who worked in the city and had lots of money. We called them Sloane Rangers. It's a good name, isn't it? So Sloane Street between the Burberrys and Harvey Nichols, people who shopped there were known as Sloane Rangers. The Mandarin Hotel is coming up in a minute, and that has a 2 Michelin starred restaurant to your left here. It's known as just simply called Dinner at the Mandarin. It was opened by Heston Blumenthal. Some of you may have heard of him. He was a very famous British restaurateur who now lives in France. It opened in 2005, Dinner, and was listed for many years in the top 5 restaurants of the world. It's at the Mandarin to your left, so quite a good restaurant. Not that I can afford to go there, I talk about these things. Of course, some of you said you're from France, so there you are, your embassy is here to your left. Coming up to your left is the French embassy, there it is. Vive la France, there we are, with the European flag. Now, I'll tell this story as we cruise along here because I've got plenty of time to say it. I'm aware I haven't said anything particularly funny just yet, but I believe this is funny because it's actually true. Keep looking to the right, and on the very corner, a building from 1780, and it was once a hospital, known as the St. George's Hospital. It's now known as the hotel where all the celebrities stay. And it's right on the very corner. If you keep looking over there, you can see the hotel on the corner. If you really want to treat yourself, then you can book out the Royal Suite at the Lanesborough, it's called. It's right over there. There it is in the corner. The Royal Suite at the Lanesborough will cost you for one night only £27,000. It's the most expensive hotel room in London. But I'll give you the good news. It's £27,000 a night for one night at the Royal Suite. But it does come with free Wi-Fi. Isn't it? There you go, it's a bargain, eh? Free Wi-Fi. You're going to book it now, aren't you? I can see, yeah. But that's where, if you think of all our celebrities, who have we got? If you pick people like Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, Lady Gaga, it was Michael Jackson's favourite hotel, the Lanesborough. Formerly a hospital until 1980, it was where Edward Jenner perfected his first vaccine against smallpox in 1796. Happened when that was the St. George's Hospital to your right. Now on the corner here to your left, you've got the entrance to Hyde Park, and then a very famous man. He owns the building here, or owned the building, and he's known to us as the Duke of Wellington. I hope that sounds familiar to a few of you. The Duke of Wellington was the man who defeated Napoleon in the famous Battle of Waterloo. That's his home to your left, Apsley House, and it's now a museum. You can visit it. And in fact, they left it exactly as it was when he died. That's the thing about the house. His ancestors still live on the top floor today, and the rest is a museum dedicated to the life of the Duke of Wellington, the person who defeated Napoleon for the first and only time, it has to be said, in 1815 at the Battle of Waterloo, the only time Napoleon was ever defeated. And there's a memorial over here to your right, that Roman looking arch just commemorates the Battle of Waterloo. To your right there. Now the address of Apsley House is what I like at the time. Imagine buying a house in 1817, the house we just passed had the address of number 1 London. So there you go. We now have expanded all the way past Heathrow to Uxbridge, but that was the edge of London in 1817. So the last 200 years we have expanded a lot. Now we have a wall, of course, surrounding one of the most famous buildings in London. Can anyone tell me what's behind the wall to your left? Anyone at the back there? Do you know what's behind the wall? Buckingham Palace. Yeah, so Buckingham Palace behind the wall here to your left. The largest private garden in London, by the way, 40 acres. Buckingham Palace itself is 775 rooms. So that's not too shabby, is it? 775 rooms in Buckingham Palace. And these are some of the rooms we know about. 92 rooms are used as offices. There's 188 staff bedrooms. And if King Charles is in Buckingham Palace, he has a choice of 78 toilets. That's what I call a royal flush. Thank you. So 78 toilets, that's indeed what we call a royal flush. The interesting thing for me, you can see the wall that surrounds the palace, and you've even got extra barbed wire fence above the wall. They even have security cameras. Now a lot of people think that we have very high security to stop people climbing over the wall and breaking into the palace, but the real reason they have such high security is not to stop people getting in, it's to stop Prince Andrew from breaking out. Thank you. The jokes are starting now, I can't help it. But actually, it is indeed to stop people breaking in. Ever since Michael Fagan, very famously, 1982, he revealed all in 2016. He was drunk, climbed over the wall, climbed up a drain pipe, left his shoes on the roof, he said, so he'd be quiet. And he walked around in his socks, and no one arrested him. And it was between 6 and 7, after opening many doors he said were empty, he opened a door to the Queen's bedroom. Quite surprising. He said actually I wasn't even looking for the Queen. I was just wandering around the palace in my drunken state. And yeah, he disturbed the Queen in the bedroom, so that's why we have such high security. The Queen, bless her, decided not to press charges, but the Queen has a way of getting her own subtle revenge. He said 7 years later he got a present, and he said all it said on the card was Merry Christmas. And I thought, oh, maybe it's some chocolates, a bottle of wine. I opened it up and it smelled awful. He said it was a mouldy old pair of shoes that I'd left on the roof. So he got them returned 7 years later. He said they must have left them on the roof because they smelled terrible. And just with a message, Merry Christmas. That was it. Now these are the staff headquarters to your left. The Queen did not spend much time. As amazing as it is, Buckingham Palace, she much preferred to spend time in Windsor, and in fact she liked to spend time not being the Queen. Her favourite place was Balmoral. It's well known at Balmoral she'd get the barbecue out, do her own dishes. She loved to just be a normal person for a while when she was up in Balmoral with the family. And she didn't have to be the Queen and do all the things that the Queen has to do as head of state and sign government legislation. King Charles, we bless him, has recuperated from cancer, and we do wish him all the best. He seems to be doing well. So he's spending more time out of London at the moment. Now they're opening up more rooms. If you're back during the summer, we can visit 19 staterooms to your left. And there's a little art gallery with Holbein. He was a court painter. To your left, he was court painter to Henry VIII. There's a change of the guard, of course, happens here. I should mention that. But they've cancelled them. Friday, Sunday and Monday. So the next one is not till next Wednesday. Now I do another walk called the Change of the Guard walk, and I did say to my girlfriend, if Charles keeps cancelling these Change of the Guard walks, I'm going to have to send a bill in to him for lost earnings. Because they have cancelled a few this April. They of course got the London Marathon. There's various reasons why they cancel, and there's some other events coming up. So the next Change of the Guard is Wednesday. And if you want to see what happens in front of the palace, it's to your left, between 11 and 12. But if you don't get there early, you don't see that very much. So if you just want to see guards, then go to other places and you'll see where the guards come from, and you might get better photos, all right, if you are here next Wednesday. Normally it's Sunday, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, 4 days a week. And that is That is Buckingham Palace. So it became the official royal palace, by the way. Thank you. In 1837. But in fact started as 20 rooms. It was called the Queen's House, and in the 1820s we turned it into the Buckingham Palace we see today, and it's been a royal residence since 1837, since Victoria moved in. And they're opening more rooms in the summer, so we can now see more rooms inside the palace. We can visit night, so we'll, if you are here, I would recommend that. This is the Wellington Barracks, to your right, from 1833, with the 5 regiments, all right, that do the guard duty. This is where they are based. So you've got the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream, the Scots, the Irish and the Welsh. 5 different guard divisions take turns at what they call King's Mounting. That's the official title, would have been Queen's Mounting, and that's where they guard the King at Buckingham Palace. So they come from the barracks. You'll see the barracks again coming into view to your left. This is the Wellington Barracks to your left, where those 5 regiments are based. So they have regiments come from overseas as well. For the King's birthday and other occasions, so they are much bigger than they need to be, but they're a huge army barracks. And all the regiments that guard the King, it has to be said, are part of the army, so this is an extra duty they do called King's Mounting. Now we're coming up to Westminster Abbey, and you'll see it coming into view in a minute on your right. You'll see the 2 front towers. But what a lot of people don't know, the actual official name of this church is the Collegiate Church of St. Peter's, and the only reason I say that, at one time during the reign of a king called Edward VI, for his boy king, they were asking too much money, the Collegiate Church of St. Peter's, and so he took money away from this church and he gave it to St. Paul's Cathedral instead. So what he did there, he robbed Peter to pay Paul. That's where the saying comes from, robbing Peter to pay Paul. So that's the actual title of this church, the Collegiate Church of St. Peter's. It's the official royal church. We know it, of course, as Westminster Abbey, and here it is with the 2 front towers. They're the most recent addition, 1745. Most of the abbey dates from the 1200s. It's where many kings and queens are buried, and it was where Charles was officially crowned king on the 6th of May last year. It was the 41st coronation event. Now you can pay to be buried in Westminster Abbey, so over the years many famous people have asked to be buried in our abbey to your right, including Charles Dickens. He's buried there, Isaac Newton, the scientist, Charles Darwin, and more recently Stephen Hawking was buried there in 2018. Now, of course, the Elizabeth Tower. I don't mind if you call it Big Ben. Even in London we all call it Big Ben, but Big Ben is officially the bell inside what we used to call the clock tower. It's now known as the Elizabeth Tower. These are all statues of various Victorian Prime Ministers, and some more recent statues. We just passed, if you crane your neck behind us to your left, you can see that's actually Abraham Lincoln by his chair there. So he's over there. And also, to your right, we have Mahatma Gandhi. Very good likeness of Mahatma Gandhi, or Ben Kingsley, one or the other. But actually definitely Mahatma Gandhi. And we have Nelson Mandela, the only man to unveil his own statue amongst these statues. But back to the Elizabeth Tower. It was under scaffolding for 4 years while they cleaned it up and replaced some of the masonry. So it looks beautiful now, doesn't it? They repainted it gold. They cleaned the clock face that we all thought was black, and it turns out underneath all that grime it was blue. The clock face hadn't been cleaned since 1952. The Big Ben and the Elizabeth Tower is all part of the House of Parliament. We have 650 members of Parliament, and here they are to your right. They sit in the House of Commons, we call it. 650 MPs divided by 2 lines. Now here's a saying you may have heard: there are 2 lines dividing the opposition and the party in power to your right, and they have to toe the line. So the toe is not allowed to cross the line, and that's where we get the saying toe the line. It comes from the House of Parliament to your right. And this is where they sit. Dates from the 1830s, alright, so to replace the previous House of Parliament, 1830s. We have 650 MPs, and this year is an election year. That's the boring stuff out of the road. Now we're going to go to the London Eye, of course. The London Eye opened in 2000. 32 pods. 25 people maximum per pod, and it's always in motion. So when you go on the London Eye, it's always moving. So everybody gets half an hour, which makes it fair. New London tradition, if you fancy it. People are now getting married on the London Eye, if you fancy that. But this is the tradition. You have to get married on the way up, and then it's all downhill after that. Yeah, did you get that? Married on the way up and all downhill after that. It closes down at 6 o'clock. This one's just for the kids. The reason we have to close that giant wheel down at 6 o'clock is we have to give it back to the giant hamster that owns it. Alright, so it's a giant hamster wheel later on. Come here at 12 midnight and you'll see what I mean. Our nursing school over there to your right. If you know Florence Nightingale, she's the founder of modern nursing. You can go to a museum in the hospital to your right to Florence Nightingale, known as the founder of modern nursing. So we're going to Waterloo now. We'll pass the London Eye again. You'll see just how big it was. It was the largest observational wheel in Europe when it opened in 2000, and was only going to be there for 5 years. So British Airways only sponsored it for 5 years, and they had to find a new sponsor. It was Coca-Cola, and now it's lastminute.com, which is why it's pink. That's the colour. The lastminute.com, they sponsor the London Eye. So I've been inside it. I think it's good. It's never too busy. 25 maximum per pod. There we are to your left. Half an hour to go around. And a good day, on a sunny day, it's true. You will see all the way to Windsor Castle outside London. If you come back in 5 years, that will all look different to you, right? They're pulling that office block down. It's going to be a new hotel and restaurant. Because the London Eye is so popular, they're going to put a new hotel restaurant there. That's Waterloo Station, the busiest rail station in London. 1 billion people every year. Ahead of you is a cinema screen, and that is the IMAX Cinema. Now the IMAX Cinema only opened in 2007. Straight ahead of you, this round building. It's 2.5 double-decker buses high. That is true. That's how big the cinema screen is. It's where Christopher Nolan premieres all his films. If you don't know a Christopher Nolan film, think of Inception. Think of Oppenheimer and all those Batman films. Clearly Charles loves his films because he's going to make him a knight, so he's being knighted in the honours list. And his wife, who's a producer, is going to become a dame. So if you're a man, you become a knight of the round, knighted, and if you're a lady, become a dame. So his wife's going to become a dame, and he will be knighted. That's Christopher Nolan, our British director. Waterloo Bridge, this one's just for the ladies upstairs. There are 8 bridges crossing the River Thames, and this was built during very difficult times in World War II, but I'm told despite the difficulties of building this bridge, it was built by the women of London during World War II, and it's the only bridge in London built on time and on budget. Well done. Now you get a good view, okay, coming up. It's a good view of the London Eye with Elizabeth Tower inside it, to your left. Alright, so have a look to your left. So if you want a good photo, it's going to come up to your left at this place called the South Bank Centre. You'll see the Royal Festival Hall, and there's our view to your left now. There it is. So it's a good view, isn't it? The Elizabeth Tower and the London Eye, only available since 2000. Now we're crossing over Waterloo Bridge, good chance for you to get some great photos on either side of the Thames. South Bank Centre to your left is an entertainment venue, the Royal Festival Hall, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Frank Sinatra's favourite venue, what can I say, said to be the best acoustics in London. We can look at the clock, still the largest clock face on any building in the world, and that is on the Shell building to your left. The clock says it's 5 after 9, or it's coming up to 10 after 9. From the 1930s, that building. The red one, that's Charing Cross Station, with the red over there to your left, and of course to your right you'll be able to now see the dome of St Paul's Cathedral. We'll cross there very shortly. And there's the embankment, the cars coming up and down, isn't that beautiful with the lights on to your left? Now here's a bit of London humour for you. The building over to your right is known as Somerset House, and it's a good example of a Georgian building, first of all, from 1776 to your right. It was a government department, originally built for the Navy, but in the 60s and 70s, this building to your right was where we went for our birth certificate, our marriage certificate, and our death certificate. So that's where we got our birth certificate, our marriage certificate, and our death certificate to your right. So it was known in London as the building of Hatcham, Matcham, and Dispatcham. Births, marriages, and deaths. There we are. Today it's got several restaurants, several art galleries. It's called Somerset House, and it is very, very nice. And the courtyard puts on concerts. I remember they're touring again in December. I saw Vampire Weekend in 2003, I think it was, after their first album. If you're lucky enough, you would have seen Adele perform in the courtyard very early on. They do concerts in the summer. To your right there at Somerset House. Now there's something going on here. There's a few lights. There's a bit of work. What do we? I don't think we need to worry too much. There are some theatres here, of course. The Lyceum Theatre. You'll see straight ahead playing The Lion King, and it's been playing since 1999, and I suspect in 20 years' time it will still be playing. It's very, very popular, The Lion King, isn't it? This was once a rock venue straight ahead, in fact. And Bob Marley, his only live album, Live, was recorded here in London at the Lyceum Theatre in 1975, and the big hit from that album was No Woman, No Cry, so it was actually recorded at the Lyceum. There was once a rock venue, now back to being a theatre. Now you'll see India House to your right, the colours of the India flag, the white, the green, the orange. There you've got Frozen, the only musical that beat Frozen last year. Its best new musical was Back to the Future. And finally, after a couple of years, Back to the Future, prices have gone down. So I think £40 for a ticket is not unreasonable here in London, so I'm going to see Back to the Future. I have seen the lady who plays Tina Turner to your left, and I'm very happy to say that, lady, you are simply the best. The lady who plays Tina Turner is amazing, and in fact, she said I was there one day on stage and I looked into the audience, and this was before she passed away, not long before she passed away. Tina Turner, she said, was sitting in the audience looking back at me, and I was very nervous, but she said she'd come up and said I was doing a wonderful job, and she is very, very good. To your right, you might see, if you look up the building, always worth looking up. If you look up upstairs, you'll see, looks like two gentlemen passing an ice cream to each other, and they're actually passing the torch of friendship. The building to your right is called Bush House, and there was an American called Irving Bush who opened the building in 1930, and he dedicated it to the English and American-speaking peoples of the friendship of the American and English-speaking peoples. There was once the home of the British Broadcasting Corporation to your right, that we know as the BBC. Now coming up on your left, I'm going to test your musical knowledge once again. Only a little bit. It's called the London School of Economics, and you'll see it coming up to your left. John F. Kennedy went to the London School of Economics, the American president, for a year. He studied here in London for a year. So it's coming up on your left, the London School of Economics. Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones went to the London School of Economics, but he left after 3 months. For those who don't know why, I will tell you, because you could get no satisfaction nearly at the London School of Economics to your left there. Now Australia House, first Harry Potter reference of the night. All the scenes from Gringotts Bank, if you loved your Harry Potter, When they went into Gringotts Bank, remember they went to go to that vault, they went into Australia House. All the scenes for Gringotts Bank and Harry Potter were filmed to your right there in Australia House. I think the interesting thing for me, we all thought they were goblins inside Gringotts Bank, and it turns out they were actually Australians. I know. Bomb damage in the church, that happened in World War II, to your right. Now, George Street wanted to build a religious building. He didn't get his wish. They asked him to build a law courts, which is why it looks quite religious. 1882, the Royal Courts of Justice. Two famous court cases recently, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. Because all that information about Johnny Depp was revealed in our newspaper, The Sun. And Harry took the Daily Mirror to court there recently. To your left there, the Royal Courts of Justice. Wooden building to your right, you can see it, just by the green lights. The only wooden building left in the street to your right, passing right now. I don't often mention it, but it is worth mentioning. Every other building, that's the only building that exists prior to the year 1666. It's the only wooden building left. All the rest burned down during the Great Fire of London, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So it's extraordinary to say that, but one wooden building left on the street, and we just passed it back there. It's called Prince Henry's Room. He was the son of James I, but he died before he became king, and we had Charles I in the English Civil War, and that's another story in itself. But here we are now on Fleet Street. This is the name of the street. Once the home of journalism, so if you're here in the 80s, it would be quite a different scene to tonight. It would be a hive of activity. The Sun, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, the Express, the Guardian, all our newspapers. This was known as the Street of Ink. Then the newspapers moved away to new headquarters, so a bit quieter. Today, one reason to come to the street is to a very famous pub. Keep looking to your left, it's called the Old Cheshire Cheese, alright? So keep looking to your left, the Old Cheshire Cheese. And the reason that this pub is famous is it's dated from the year 1667, and we would now believe to your left it's the only pub that still has its original features. Does that make sense? So the Old Cheshire Cheese has not changed since 1667 to your left there, which means when you walk into that pub, you're walking into the world of 1667, 1 year after the Great Fire of London. It's quite an interesting experience. You'll see these little cubicles where we used to drink. Famously known as the Writers' Pub, the Old Cheshire Cheese was quite genuinely where Charles Dickens would go and read from his new novels, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote all the Sherlock Holmes books, was one of its famous patrons. And a man called Samuel Johnson would sit in the corner every night. He lived around the corner, and if you don't know what he did, he wrote the first English language dictionary. Samuel Johnson. And once I said, well, Ian, let's have a look at Samuel Johnson's dictionary. And he said, was a very British character, because this is a very British sense of humour. I loved his definition in the first English language dictionary. Samuel Johnson clearly spent a long time writing it. And his definition I saw for the word dull, he writes dull, as in writing an English language dictionary. So he didn't enjoy his task, and it made him a lot of money. And that would be the 1700s. Now, of course, we're heading off to St. Paul's Cathedral. And again, because of the Great Fire of London, we had to build a new one. The previous cathedral was a wooden church that burnt down. Now, the Great Fire of London is certainly something that, I have a history degree, so it certainly interests me, but it's amazing how much of the city it destroyed. 85%, and I often wondered why. And the reason that became very clear to me, these were all wooden buildings, all joined together, and that was the problem. When the fire started, it was very hard to put out. So when they decided to build a new St. Paul's, they said, well, let's build a church, a beautiful church that looks like one of the best in the world. So they based St. Paul's Cathedral on St. Peter's in Rome. Quite deliberate. This is why we have a very similar dome to St. Peter's in Rome. That was the most difficult part of the church to build. So it took 35 years to build this church. It's 365 feet high. We say 1 foot for every day of the year. And it was was completed in the year 1711, alright? So there was a lot of problems even getting started, but it was completed during the reign of Queen Anne. So the Queen outside the front of the church is Queen Anne. Not Queen Victoria, as you might expect. This is definitely Queen Anne. There she is, to your left. Now, in the year 2011, on the 300th anniversary, they spent 44 million on that church, and that's how much it cost just to clean it. When I first came here in the 90s, it looked black. That's the only way to describe it, grey and black. But look at it now, it looks very new. It still surprises me because I can have this vivid memory of what it used to look like with all that pollution that was clinging to it, grey, black to your left, and it was cleaned up in 2011. If you look back, you'll get a great photo of the church and the dome. It's called the Golden Gallery. You can go all the way to the top. You've got the Whispering Gallery, very famous in there, and you whisper on one side, they can hear you. You can go all the way to the top to the Golden Gallery. The Duke of Wellington, I mentioned him, he's buried in there, along with the person who built it, Christopher Wren, very famous architect of the day. So we're officially now in the City of London, that's what I need to be saying. So London is actually two cities in one, Westminster and the City of London. And this is where we are now, the City of London. And it really is a working part of the city, which is why it's quiet at night time. When people go home, it's very quiet. Not very many people live in this part of London. But if you come back tomorrow morning, it'll be very busy again. So in this part of the city, of course, we have the Bank of England. We have Lloyd's Insurance, and this all down here to your left. You've got Lloyd's Insurance, the Bank of England, the headquarters for Lloyd's Bank, NatWest Bank. But because of the traffic and some roadworks happening to your left, we go straight ahead. So you've got some very old buildings down this part to your left. Bank of England, parts of that date from the 18th century, 1700s. We also have a mayor just for the City of London, not to be confused with Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of Greater London. They have a mayor just for the City of London. They're elected every year, and it's called Mansion House down there to your left, from 1720. It's a building to your left. But we're going to go straight ahead, and we're going to head off to London Bridge, and we'll show you a wonderful, great photo opportunity of Tower Bridge, which you'll see all lit up. Before we get there, it's worth saying a lot of these buildings actually post-date World War II. Some people refer to it as the second Great Fire of London. On the 30th of December, we lost a lot of the city during a bombing raid one night. Much of it had to be rebuilt, as you can see to your left. So down there is all about the financial world. Bank of England, headquarters for Lloyd's Bank. Lloyd's Insurance, who insured everyone from Keith Richards' guitar playing finger, had that insured in 1965 for £500,000. Egon Rooney had his taste buds insured, and of course that famous dancer Michael Flatley. I think Adele, I'm right saying, had her voice insured after she couldn't do many concerts and she wasn't able to perform. Now this is the Michael Bloomberg building to your left, and that opened in 2018, so that's quite new. And underneath the Michael Bloomberg building there's a bit of history I haven't mentioned yet. There's a little museum under the building to your left, and it's dedicated to the Roman city. That's right. The city used to be under the occupation of the Romans from Italy, and they called their city Londinium, so we've taken the name. So to your left, underneath the building, is a little museum dedicated to our Roman history. The Romans arrived in 43 AD and they left in 410 when the Roman Empire collapsed. So 400 years of Roman history in the city as well. They called their town Londinium, and we took that name and shortened it to London. But all the time we're finding evidence of our Roman history. There's several places you can go in the City of London. You can go and visit the Guildhall, a place called the Guildhall, and there they have a famous amphitheatre, which they've excavated, Roman amphitheatre. But we're going to make our way across London Bridge in a minute, and we're going to show you a monument which is dedicated to the Great Fire of London. It's now a tourist attraction down an alleyway. You'll see it coming up. So we have a monument we put up because this is where the Great Fire of London started in 1666 on the 2nd of September. 5 nights raged on for. So when they rebuilt London in 1678, the last thing they built, we'll see in a minute, it's called the Monument, the largest freestanding stone column in the world. And it's here because this is where the fire accidentally started in the bakery oven in Pudding Lane. So keep looking out to your left. You'll see what we call the monument to be between two buildings on your left. That pub has a strict dress code to your left. I remember going in there. So some pubs do have a dress code, some don't. We're used to. The building to your left, by the way, that curved building, Sky Gardens, if you fancy it. That's actually a viewing platform at the top. You go online and you find the next one that's free. It's a free viewing platform. And here we are. Here's the monument to your left. Okay, so down the alleyway to your left. This is where the fire started in the bakery. This is known as Pudding Lane. And there it is. The monument. Isn't that interesting? 1678. You can climb up the top today. It's a tourist attraction. Now we're on London Bridge, make no mistake. Well, we have a wonderful bridge to show you, and it's coming up to your left. So keep your cameras or phones ready and take some photos of our wonderful Tower Bridge. It should be all lit up for you. We asked them to especially light it up for See London by Night. But there it is, our beautiful Tower Bridge to your left. Very iconic, very famous London landmark, that is Tower Bridge. And it opened in 1894. It might look a lot older, but it was designed to look like the Tower of London. That's what they did. So it's got a walkway across the top, and it's a very unique bridge in London, the only bridge that does so. The bottom section lifts up on either side. So it lifts up on either side, like a drawbridge. And that is HMS Belfast, the World War II cruiser that's now a museum to your left. So that's where we're heading, off to Tower Bridge. Over to your right is Borough Market, popular amongst students. I can tell you that. When you run out of money, you know where to go. You go to Borough Market, because I don't mind you walking around sampling food. That's what you do. Go to Borough Market, and so, well, yeah, I'll have a piece of that salami, a little bit of cheese, some bread with that. They know what we're doing, but they don't mind. So this is Borough Market over here to your right. Very famous now. They sell food from all over Europe and all over the UK. If you're lucky enough to be there at 9 in the morning, my recommendation, come early in the morning. They even sell oysters before they run out. They come up fresh from the coast. You'll get 12 oysters for £11, which, trust me, is a lot better than going to a restaurant. So it's a Borough Market to your right, under the bridge. Famous food market. I've had Colombian street food, that was nice. They've got a Taiwanese restaurant now doing bao buns, which is lovely. So we're now going into, we have crossed the bridge, so you might say we're in South London. There is a bit of a north-south divide, east-west, north-south. Most cab drivers, the black cab drivers you see on this side of the river, stick to this side of the river. They know all the streets on this side, and the ones on the other side know the streets on the north of the river. So we're going down Tooley Street is the name of the street. That's London Bridge, and that's London Bridge Station we passed. And one time again, this was very, very busy. There was a wharf here to your left called Hayes Wharf, and this building was called Hayes Galleria. We're passing just now to your left. It's now Hayes Galleria. It was a huge warehouse where we stored all our wool, meat, dairy products, tea, coffee, spices to your left. Now Hayes Galleria. So the wharf closed in 1970 and was converted to Hayes Galleria. And then we redeveloped the area just in front in the early 2000s. Can you see that to your left? When we opened a new residence for the Mayor of London, they developed the area to your left. Quite nice. Ole Stein is in there somewhere, and they are a Danish firm. Anyone from Denmark? We do like Ole Stein. They do good cakes and coffees. Now over here to your right, see all those lights. If you want a cheap steak at a reasonable price, the latest trend in London is to go to, it's called Iron, Flat Iron. And there's a branch over here at London Bridge to your right. All cocktails, by the way, £8. So that's not bad, is it? It's Flat Iron to your right. There's a branch of it there. And steaks are generally no more than £20 with good sides. So it's something that's popular if you're on a bit of a budget, called Flat Iron, and still pretty good food. There it is to your right. That's a branch. There's several in Soho. They're all around London now. They're called Flat Iron restaurants. But their selection of cocktails, you won't pay any more than £8, which is not bad, trust me, in London. So, but I think we're just stuck here at the lights, so I think that's all it is. Now, I need to tell you a story and then explain something very important, because it's a special treat coming up here now. This bridge called Tower Bridge is a working bridge, so sometimes it lifts up if there's a ship which is too big or it wants to go under the bridge, can come underneath this bridge. This is the furthest it can go, and the bridge will lift up on either side, and that will allow the ship to go under the bridge, and then the two sides will go back down. It rises very quickly, so we have a light on the bridge, and the light will stop us going over the bridge if the bridge is working. But famously on the 30th of December 1952, on a very foggy morning, alright, you may have heard of the word fog, a man called Albert Gunter was riding a 78 bus full of passengers, and he didn't see the light on the bridge. And as he famously got into the middle of the bridge, he said he realised something was wrong because the bridge was lifting up underneath his bus. Now what did that mean for Albert? Well, it meant there was now a gap from one side of the bridge to the other, and the gap was getting bigger and bigger. He had no time to reverse his bus down the bridge, and this genuinely happened on the 30th of December 1952. A man called Albert Gunter had to do what he had to do to get his passengers across to the other side. He put his foot to the floor, and the bus rose up from one side of the bridge into the air. People said they saw it, and it went about, had to get over a 3-foot gap on the bridge. He's famously known as the man who jumped Tower Bridge. And we're the only company to offer this special treat. So hold on tight, everyone. We're now going to make Albert's famous jump. I hope you're listening up there. All right, so hold on, kids. Do you want to jump Tower Bridge? Of course you do. Hold on, everyone. But this is where it happened. He actually had to jump Tower Bridge. True story. And he got across safely, I should say, very famously. So the bridge opened in 1894. The stone cladding was added to the iron framework later on. And this is where it happened, right here. So City of London now to your left. Shard behind us to your left. Highest green platform in London, definitely the Shard, that tall, thin thing to your left. The sliced onion that used to be the home of the Mayor of London, he's moved somewhere else now, to your left. And of course we're heading to the Tower of London. There's a glass walkway if you look above you. I love that, glass walkway. So you can now walk across. Someone said to me, we can look down at the bus from the glass walkway. And it got me thinking, of course you can look down from the bus, but we can also look up at you. So if you're on the glass walkway, I'm only going to say make sure you are appropriately dressed on the glass walkway here on the bridge. Now, we're heading past the Tower of London. The oldest part of the Tower of London to your left are the 4 turrets in the middle. That dates from the year 1078. The second part was built in 1200 and the last outer wall in 1400. And what was the Tower of London? It was the former home of the royal families. This is where our kings and queens lived until around 1600. Which is why it's so well preserved, because it's a former royal castle. But I can see they're having to do some repair work there. It's a very old building. So it's a castle really. It's got 16 turrets. The area around it would be filled with water. We call that the moat. But no king or queen has lived there since the 1600s, so it's been used for various things since then. It was a royal observatory. It's where we minted the coins of the realm. Famously today, of course, it's where we have the crown jewels. So that's all the different crowns and royal gold and things that belong to the royal family. Now belongs to King Charles. The collection, the royal collection, the crown jewels, has been unofficially valued at between 4 and 7 billion, not million, billion pounds. Isn't that amazing? So don't worry about King Charles. If he needs to raise money, you could always go to his jewellery collection in the tower, take out one of his crowns and go down to cash converters. Would you like to see that? King Charles and cash converters, wouldn't we like to see that? But there it is, that is the Tower of London, to your left there. Had to be repaired after World War II, suffered some damage, but that's the only time. When you go there, have a look at the houses inside the tower. They're good examples of what the City of London used to look like. You'll see these Tudor houses on the green. And people forget that, of course, there are no examples in London of that anymore, but that's what London used to look like before the Great Fire. And some good examples are the houses on the green in the Tower of London, looked after by the Beefeaters. They've all retired from the army, and it's a job you can apply to do. All the tour guides in there are retirees from the army, because King Charles, that's one of his titles, he's Colonel-in-Chief of the army, so they look after the tower there. This church to your left is called All Hallows by the Tower, and it's even older, 676 AD, it's amazing, look at that to your left, genuinely 676 AD, the oldest church in London, All Hallows by the Tower to your left. So old that the floor of that church is actually the floor of an old Roman house. The floor of the old Roman house was all that was left, but they used that as the floor of the church. Now here's a building that used to be Billingsgate Fish Market to your left, and there's been no permanent thing has moved in, but it's now the Balloon Museum, so we'll see how long that lasts. To your left, they've been there about 6 months, the Balloon Museum. Do you think that sounds like a winner? I don't know. I mean, maybe it will be successful. It's been there for 6 months. The various there's been various attempts to occupy that building. So it used to be a fish market that closed. Here's a church to your left. There are several churches, many churches built after the Great Fire of London survived, 29. So those are the old buildings that tend to survive, but a lot of what we see around us is in fact quite simply office space for the City of London. So a lot of what we see around us are simply offices for the City of London. If you move and base your business in the City of London, you get a tax break or tax discount. So keep that one a bit quiet, but it's true to say many of these buildings date from the 70s and 80s when they redeveloped this side of the river. So it's all offices. Now we passed alongside Cannon Bridge Station, you may have seen that. This is underneath Cannon Bridge Station. One of the best venues in the whole of London is at the very top above us of Cannon Street Station. Not a lot of people know this. There's a whole lawn atop the station with a garden, and you can hire it out as a venue. It's amazing. It's a lawn and a garden, and it gives you wonderful views over the Thames, and it's right at the top of the building. And you have to hire it out though. That's the only way to, I think, get that experience. So businesses use it if they want maybe Christmas celebration. So we're going to go alongside the River Thames soon enough, and we'll pass Tate Modern Art Gallery on one side, and we'll also shortly be passing a school called City of London School. It's no longer a school, but one of its most famous pupils was a little boy called Daniel Radcliffe. So it might ring a bell. A little boy who auditioned at the age of 11 to play Harry Potter. We'll see that very shortly. But we're going to go under the underpass first. But when we go out of the underpass, on your left you'll see former power station. coal-fired power station, which is why there's a chimney, and it's now the Tate Modern Art Gallery. Think Picasso, Salvador Dali, Frida Kahlo, people like that, Andy Warhol, Jasper Johns, and if you know your art, Francis Bacon, gosh. So that's all at the Tate Modern. To your left and on your right you'll see a building all lit up, and that's City of London School. So, well, we're going under the underpass now. So there to your left, that's the Tate Modern Art Gallery, former power station. This huge building to your left, opened in 2005 by the Queen. Behind it, by the way, is Shakespeare's recreated Globe Theatre, a recreation of what they think his original theatre, William Shakespeare's theatre, looked like. And here to your right, you'll see a building under lights, and you might see Curtis coming up to your right, City of London School. This is Daniel Radcliffe, went to City of London School, and then at the age of 11 he auditioned to be Harry Potter. And at that time J.K. Rowling had only written 2 books, so they had no idea how many films there would be. So there we are to your right. To your left, they're becoming popular, roof terraced restaurants. So there's 2 to your left, the sea containers. All sea containers in the whole world are made here in London, that's what we're told. The OXO refers to a warehouse that used to make the OXO beef stock cube. So it was really just a way of advertising his product. So he made OXO actually the permanent feature of the building. That's why it's never changed. It's now a restaurant, and they call it the OXO Tower Restaurant. So they have to keep the OXO because it's the permanent feature, said to be the windows of the building. And it was all to get around an advertising ban. They banned advertising in the front of buildings, so to get around it, he made it a feature, made it windows. So that's what it really is. OXO are the windows. And they're red tonight. There we are, the OXO beef stock cube. Now this will confuse you. I once took an OXO beef stock cube and I mixed it with some nitrous oxide. Do you know what I made? I made myself a laughing stock. It was a joke. If you know what nitrous oxide is, you might get there. But there it is, that's the Roof Terrace restaurant you left, the OXO restaurant. The River Thames, by the way, is tidal, so it goes all the way out to sea. So that's, a lot of people don't realise that. It's actually salt water all the way up here, all the way up to Richmond. It would be salt water. So you get a number of different fish. 2 weeks ago, people were watching a pod of dolphins swimming in the River Thames, and it's true, they came all the way up to Thames. Because we do get fish there. You get roach, bream, very famously eels are a famous fish here in London. If you really want to try London delicacy, I can't say I recommend it. Even Londoners don't often eat this, but jellied eels is a real East End delicacy, jellied eels. If you're really adventurous. So a number of fish, as I say, caught in the River Thames. It's cleaner than it used to be. And of course I'm originally, and so I decided to go fishing one down the River Thames to your left, and to my surprise I caught some salmon in the River Thames. And I'll explain how I did this. So I was fishing in the River Thames to your left, and my fishing line caught hold of a shopping trolley. And when I pulled it in, inside the shopping trolley was a tin of salmon. But that's still catching salmon in the Thames, isn't it? But seriously, they say you can catch salmon in the River Thames amongst many other fish. So we had a whale visit us in 2006. They actually have the Thames barrier to left that regulates how much water can come up the River Thames. So it's when they open it up that allows all these fish to come up the Thames. Unbelievable as it sounds today, it used to freeze over during winter time. So in fact, up to 3 months of the year, the River Thames to your left would freeze over. But in the 1860s, we took away 20 metres on either side, so we made this what we call the Victoria Embankment. That's what it's called. And this created this lovely road we're on today and the nice walkway. And as a result, the Thames flows much faster, so it hasn't frozen over for well over 100 years. I think in fact 1814 was the last time you could safely walk on the River Thames when it froze over. A couple of places you can drink along the River Thames. Tattersall Castle, we were talking about that with someone today. It's a nice boat opposite the London Eye. If you want to have a drink, it's called the Tattersall Castle. You're now looking under orange there at the Royal Festival Hall. There it is. They have their own orchestra as well, the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And they invite every year somebody to put on a show. So they get a famous rock star or a famous musician and say, your turn to select the artist to play at the Royal Festival Hall. And this year it is the turn of Chaka Khan, if you remember her. Chaka Khan. So that was she was famous in the 70s and 80s. So David Bowie in 2006 was able to choose his favourite artist. It's called the Meltdown Festival. I don't think there's anywhere in the world does that. They take a famous artist and say it's your chance to put on your favourite music. So this year it's Chaka Khan. I think last year was Noel Rogers from Chic. So back at the London Eye, there it is. So it would be nice if they opened the London Eye up at night. I have been up there at night time. It is rather lovely. And it's all pink because it's sponsored by lastminute.com. Alright, so that is the London Eye, sponsored by lastminute.com. There we are. Behind the London Eye, you've got Shrek's Adventures, Sea Life and London Dungeons, and the building that used to be County Hall. So the building behind it, when you see it during the day, it looks very old, but actually 1920s. It looks like an old Georgian building, the 1920s, and it's now got a hotel and it's got Shrek's Adventures. I've never been to Shrek's Adventures, but I have been to the into the aquarium, which is really good. Sea Life is a wonderful aquarium, and it's got some very big sharks in there, I have to say. And they breed penguins there as well, if you haven't been. Interesting collection. Over here then, we just passed the home of the Metropolitan Police. Our police force in London was founded in 1829, New Scotland Yard. The reason we call police bobbies in London, they were founded by Robert Peel, and if you shorten the name it's Bob, it becomes bobbies. So if you're wondering where that comes from, bobbies. We're now back at the House of Parliament, and I can tell you something I didn't say on the way up. There's a building behind the House of Parliament called Westminster Hall, and that's where we placed the Queen's coffin when she passed away, right? So we were allowed to pay our respects to Her Majesty the Queen. She was on the throne for 70 years, bless her. So 70 years is a long time, isn't it? Our longest reigning monarch. So most people, they worked out 85% of people had only ever known the Queen as the Queen. So that means that only very few people would remember George VI, who was before the Queen, if that makes sense. So 70 years. He died at the age of 96, and the queue to see the Queen's coffin was 25 hours at one time, amazingly. It went all the way down this side of the Thames, crossed the river, and all the way down to the Tower of London. That was the queue for people to see the Queen, bless her. So 70 years on the throne and 25 hours. cliche about British people. I'm from New Zealand. They say British people are polite. I'm going to say they're definitely polite. And this is my story about polite British people, or like polite Londoners or British people. Coming home once to my flat, and I had a man with a baseball bat walking towards me. This is a true story. He looked very angry with that baseball bat, and I thought he wants to hit somebody. But you know what? As he walked past me, he didn't hit me. He leaned in, and you know what he said? In a very London voice, he said, "It's all right, mate. It's not for you." No, great. That's a polite British person. Even when he's going to hit someone with that bat, I love that. He said, "It's all right, mate. It's not for you. Not for you." Isn't that wonderful? So here we are back. This is where, as I say, we had the Queen's Coffin to your left. So what it is, it's an old building from 1097 to your left called Westminster Hall. There it is to your left. That used to be a law courts to your left. It's where the man who tried to blow up Parliament, Guy Fawkes, went on trial. And there it is. That's where the Queen's coffin was placed for 3 days, so we could pay our respects to the Queen. Now, if you want to ride in one of those tuk-tuks, you need to negotiate the price beforehand. That would be the best thing to say. I negotiated the price and I was quite surprised. I was happy. I said, "Take me as far as you can for £10. And I had a nice journey. I'm going to say many years ago for £10. It may be a bit more expensive today, but I was happy with my £10 ride. He took me up near Hyde Park, so I thought that was a good tour. So this is Winston Churchill, by the way, as we're here to your left. Our wartime Prime Minister. There he is, Winston Churchill. The man who said we shall fight them on the beaches and in the street landings and in the streets and in the hills. We will never surrender. It's a very the old British bulldog, that order, the man who kept the morale up during the Second World War. Called Whitehall now. These are all government departments. Tax office to your left. And coming up is the home of the British Prime Minister. It's behind an iron railing and it's called number 10 Downing Street. So it's actually over 100 rooms, number 10 Downing Street. It's coming up to your left. Have a look for an iron railing, and down the street is the home of the Prime Minister. For a brief period in 2020 and 2021, number 10 Downing Street was where we used to host some of the best parties in London. Now, some people, if you don't know the joke, you don't know the joke. But that was what got our Prime Minister Boris Johnson into trouble during lockdown, hosting parties at number 10. It's an old building from 1685 and been the home of the Prime Minister since 1720. My favourite story from number 10 Downing Street, the little chair by the door. Now, during winter time, if someone wanted to see the Prime Minister, they'd have to knock on the door of number 10. And there's a chair by the door with a tray underneath that would fill full of hot coals. And this is what they would say: "Whose turn is it to sit in the hot seat tonight?" That's where it comes from, number 10. It's called the hot seat, the little chair by the door of number 10. It still sits there today. But obviously with central heating, we don't need to fill that little with hot coals, but that's called the hot seat. Now, coming up to your left is where we guard King Charles on horseback too. This is where the Household Cavalry come down every day. Those 2 sentry posts to your left, and they sit there on horseback. To your right, another reference to Harry Potter. Down that street to your right, the one immediately to your right, they put a red telephone box. And that's where they entered the Ministry of Magic. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So the Harry Potter tours come down here, because they filmed scenes for the Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So I think that was the 5th one. Back at Trafalgar Square, a very famous man there atop the tall column. He was around at the same time as the Duke of Wellington, and he's called Admiral Horatio Lord Nelson. And he's famous for winning a very famous battle called the Battle of Trafalgar on the 21st of October 1805. So the whole area is called Trafalgar Square, named after that famous battle where he defeated the French fleet in 1805. So Britain always remembers its famous victories, I guess. Behind it are 2 art galleries, the Tate, the National Gallery and the National Portrait Gallery, both worth visiting and both free. Nelson, the famous story about Nelson, he died at the Battle of Trafalgar. It was going to be 2 weeks to bring him home, so the man atop the tall column is buried in St. Paul's Cathedral. What they did to preserve his body, they pickled him in a barrel of rum. Famously, Nelson was brought home in a barrel of rum so that people could pay their respects, and he was buried in St. Paul's Cathedral. And he's actually, if you look at it during the day, it might surprise you, Nelson is portrayed atop the top of his column with one arm missing and one eye missing. So even before he was killed, he lost an arm and an eye in battle, but kept going. My recommendation for a pub in Trafalgar Square is once you left. The Admiralty is quite good. I sometimes have lunch at the Admiralty and I'm never disappointed to your left. It's a nice pub. Canadian High Commission to your right, by the way. I'll say no more than that. That's the Canadian High Commission. Anyone from Canada, that's your building there. Now, a real shock for me. It's worth looking up at buildings, and sometimes you'll see a round disc. It's called a blue plaque, and it'll tell you about somebody famous who worked in the building. Today, that's a modern office block. It's New Zealand House, actually, to your right there. But there used to be a hotel, and in that hotel worked a man called Ho Chi Minh. I'm not making this up. Ho Chi Minh worked in London as a chef and a tour guide. And if you don't know who Ho Chi Minh is, of course, Ho Chi Minh is the man who went back to Vietnam and founded the Communist Party. Now, he said he founded the Communist Party because he didn't like the way he was treated in London as a tour guide. So, of course, he started the Vietnam War, so I'm going to say the simple moral of the story then must be treat your tour guides well. Well, they become Ho Chi Minh. That was amazing when I found that out. He was once a tour guide in London. Now, this area, 1820s, very beautiful buildings. To your left, you find Christie's Auction House amongst the buildings there. One of the most famous auction houses in London. And you can go there up to 2 days before anything goes on auction. I've seen paintings worth hundreds of thousands of pounds down to your left at Christie's Auction House. Quite amazing. Well, we're, of course, now making our way to Piccadilly Circus. And the little boy with his bow and arrow, he's known as the God of Love. He's called the Eros statue. And actually made out of aluminium. So very light material, the little boy with his bow and arrow. Another famous London tradition, you need to come here at 12 midnight if you want to. And this is what you have to do. Come to the Eros statue in Piccadilly Circus at 12 midnight with somebody you love. Pledge your love to them and you'll remain with them forever. I've done it 7 times. What have I done wrong, eh? Something wrong there, isn't there? So that's the Eros statue. Now, I did see a 1-star review on TripAdvisor, and I like this. Must have been a young boy or girl. They put, I didn't like Piccadilly Circus because when we got there was no circus. 1 star. There's never been a circus, alright? I think it's a Latin word that means round. But Piccadilly is an actual reference to an item of clothing once made here by Robert Barker. And he had his house in the middle of the square, and he made something called the Piccadilly. So if you look at old paintings in William Shakespeare's day, it was a white collar they used to wear. Famous fashion item made by Robert Barker known as the Piccadilly, and that gives its name to Piccadilly Circus. Straight ahead is Regent Street, and that opened in 1819 as the first shopping street of its kind for the rich and wealthy. Today, I think the most famous store on Regent Street is probably one of them is Hamleys, certainly, and they have a whole floor dedicated to Harry Potter. I remember seeing the ad. They said don't apply to work in the Harry Potter store unless you're a Harry Potter fanatic. So they know all about Harry Potter in the store there, and they love their Harry Potter. To your right, if you keep walking, you've got Leicester Square, where you've got the M&M's, yum yum, and you've got the Lego store. So good for the kids. And then you've got a half-price theatre booth. So you never know, you can go to Leicester Square and say, look, what tickets have not sold out today? And they'll tell you, they'll have a list of tickets that haven't sold out for the evening show. And you can pick up cheaper tickets. You can do it online as well, of course, but if you're around in Leicester Square, you could go to the half-price theatre booth. Shaftesbury Avenue down there is where you find Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. And I did see tickets advertised for £30 now, so it's been around a few years. Also, our longest running musical, Les Miserables. Now we're going to turn the corner and we're heading back to Green Park, so we're almost on the home stretch. So I won't labour the point, but if you have enjoyed the tour and you wanted to leave a tip or some money because you enjoyed the tour, Don't believe what you read in guidebooks. We do like tips here at Sea London by Night. So if you wanted to leave money or a tip because you enjoyed the tour, we take dollars, we take pounds, we take euros. It's entirely up to you, but if you want to leave a tip, any money is shared between myself and the bus driver. The main thing for me is that you've enjoyed the tour and hopefully got some good photos. A couple of things to still point out on the way. To your left, Fortnum and Mason. Wonderful Fortnum and Mason supply all the food to the royal family. This is their larder, if you like. And before Fortnum and Mason is the oldest bookstore in London. Have a look to your left. It's called Hatchard's Books. The last time I went into Hatchard's Books, I actually bumped into quite a famous British actor now called Bill Nighy. Literally bumped into him. He was coming out of the store. He had bought 2 books by an Irish author, and he was being recommended to read them. So you never know who you might see in Hatchard's Books coming up to your left. A lot of the celebrities and stars like to go there to do their shop for their books. On the other side you can see a shopping arcade. You'll notice this round shopping arcade. Has anyone been in Burlington Arcade? They've got this, the only arcade in the world to have its own private police force. So there's Fortnum and Mason to your left. Hatchard's Books, 1697 by the way, Hatchard's Books, there it is. Fortnum and Mason, 1707. Wonderful store. And then over there to your right is Burlington Arcade. You're not allowed to run, sing, whistle or open an umbrella in Burlington Arcade unless you're one person. The story is that famously they tapped someone on the shoulder and he said, "Sir, you're not allowed to whistle." But guess who it was? It was Sir Paul McCartney. So they said, "Paul, carry on whistling." And he said, "Whenever I go to my studio in the morning," he said, "I like to whistle songs." So they'll tell you that story if you ask them there. They say, "Yep, Paul McCartney is the only one allowed to whistle. We couldn't stop Sir Paul whistling." Those are the rules in Burlington Arcade. It's a very famous shopping arcade. Of course, the point of not allowing people to whistle was because pickpockets used to whistle to each other when the police were coming. That's what it was all about. But here we are, we're back at the beginning. Enjoy the rest of your time here in London. It's been a pleasure taking you around. My name's been Ian. And tonight, I guess the pub will still be open across the road for a little while. If you wanted just a quick drink at Henry's Bar, you can do so. There will still be restaurants open in Piccadilly Circus as well. So have a look around. So thanks very much, Joseph Wilson. Enjoy the rest of your time in London. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Bless.